Bruce Arians, head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, recently came under a little bit of controversy after he was giving a speech in a high school about the state of football, where it's at, obviously concussions. But how he described this, I guess before we get into the clip real quick, is he's both right and wrong. I think you'll be able to tell where the wrong statement comes from. But of course, pay attention, because this is what other media outlets aren't saying, at least, how he follows it up immediately. Here's the video.
We feel like this is our sport. It's being attacked. And we got to stop it at the grassroots. All right, it's the best game that's ever been invented. All right, and we got to make sure that moms get the message. All right, because that's who's afraid of our game right now. It's not dads, it's moms. And our job is to make sure the game is safe at all levels. You know, the head really has no business being in the game. There's a lot of different teachers, but when I was taught how to tackle and how to block, it was on a two-man sled, and you did it with your shoulder pads. That's still the best way to do it.
Right. So why I wanted to show that extra piece of the clip is because, of course, he's absolutely wrong in saying that moms are ruining football.
Wrong in his first statement.
Huh?
Wrong in his first statement.
Yeah. He's right in his second statement, though, in which that at least he's taking the proper steps in coaching the right way, which needs to become a fundamental idea across all levels of football across the United States, and if they play it anywhere overseas. He's wrong in the statement about moms ruining football because science is what would be ruining football, because data and information about the concussions, we've been through this a million times before, is ruining football. The enlightenment that has come from it, obviously, is overwhelming. It's like I'd say, saying moms is ruining football is the same as saying that climate change has no effect on our Earth. You're just flat out wrong.
It's like saying moms are caring too much about the health of their kids. How dare you? How dare you care about the health of your kids, all right? And I've got theories on I meant by the very, very first statement. Best sport ever invented. No, it's not. No, it's not.
He's entitled to his opinion.
That's his opinion, but
Francis, he didn't say it was the best sport ever created. It's the best fucking game in the world.
The best, but
best fucking game in the world.
He was so confident in his statement that it actually made me believe that like everyone viewed that way. And by the way, but the thing of why I highlight that, Jason, is because it's really quick. I don't want to digress on this, but that's the reason why the changes are not happening as much from the highest level.
I agree.
Is because the highest of the positions in each team, we had the article, I'm not going to get into it too much, about how most teams weren't disclosing the full extent to the concussions, came out in the Wall Street Journal, everyone ran it, because it's the whole idea, it's our fucking sport. We're not changing it. We ain't changing that for no one. Oh, well, things happen in this life, right, where we become more knowledgeable, we actually find out more information that puts people's life at jeopardy. So you better fucking believe you're going to change it, you idiot, because it needs to change based on how much more data we get, like you just mentioned. It's not moms that are caring too much. The reason why moms care too much is because they're not getting the full extent of the information, because the teams aren't giving the full extent of the concussion rate. So of course people are going to speculate and go on the opposite side where they're like, okay, let's take this back a little bit because I don't really want to put my kid into a situation where it's a little cloudy. Yes, it's an amazing sport, and yes, we want to still persevere everything that makes it great. But at the same time, to blame that on them is ridiculous. The second part is absolutely right. You got to teach kids how to tackle so that it doesn't put the rate of concussion in an increased state where you're putting yourself in jeopardy of having a higher increased concussion rate. So two sides of it. First one, ridiculous. Second one, I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, I wanted to actually toot my own horn for once on TYT Sports. During the NFL season, I said that they should get rid of the NFL kick return and also potentially the NFL punt return. And the NFL has almost all but did that. They moved, their newest rule change has been moving the touchback to the 25-yard line. And everyone knows that the average kick and punt return, average kickoff return, rarely gets to the 25-yard line, let alone the 20, hence why most players don't even come out of the end zone anymore. Yeah. Now at the 25-yard line, you are going to see very, very few kick returns coming out of the end zone, unless it's a very short kick and they want to take the chance, or a muffed kick and it gets to, let's say, the 10-yard line or lands there and they try to run it out. It's going to all but be gone within 5 years, I believe, or they're just going to make it so all touchdowns start, after a touchdown or a field goal when the following possession includes a kickoff. it's just going to start at the 25 or I guess 30-yard line if they eventually move it there. Because that's where the evidence points to, that it's happening most in those situations. So yeah, I was fucking right about that because it's insane to sometimes have these things. And yeah, people for the most part don't want to give up or move on from what they see now. But again, I don't want to just harp on Bruce Arians for that one statement. I think that he's very, very right in the second half of that. And he actually talks for 2 minutes more. I'll leave the full interview with you in the comment section below, in the description box below, because he has the wrong mindset about moms, we've said that, but the right mindset on how you need to fundamentally instruct these kids. From the ground up, from the grassroots, as he says. You are, of course, allowed to believe that it's the greatest sport ever invented, and it's your game, and it's the best game ever invented. You love it that much, and there's a major population here who agrees with you. It's a great, great sport. I don't disagree with that. There has to be a way. When the evidence is overwhelming, you just got to find a way to make the necessary changes to keep the game alive so you can continue to play it for generations and generations without there being too much of a health risk that it's causing everybody to end up retiring early.
Yeah, I agree with that, but there's also the other side of it, which I would say is even more so. Yeah, teaching the kids the fundamentals is one thing.
Well, upholding the fundamentals.
Yeah, upholding the fundamentals and making sure that it's the safest way possible without changing the game. But it's also relying on the same thing that you aren't acknowledging as the reason why these changes have to be put in place, and that's science, that's knowledge, that's data. And we shot a clip. I was in New York recently with Jaden Beck, their two TYT hosts who work for a channel called PsyQ, and it was a really breathtakingly interesting discussion as to what science is doing to try and adjust to this and try to make it as safe as possible.
Well, speaking of bringing science into it and science solving the problem, I wanted today to talk about a few new technologies that are being brought into sport to help prevent or treat concussions.
Yeah.
So the first one I wanted to talk about is mouth guards. So there's this awesome new technology that's come out where mouth guards have been embedded with LED lights and sensors inside the helmet, so that when a player has a minor concussion or a major concussion, their mouth guard will light up with an LED color, for green for no problem and then red if it's really serious. But in addition to that, there's also a feed that the coaches and the sports doctors can look at to see that player's history of concussions and figure out what they want to do with that player, if it's worthwhile taking them off for a bit of a rest or if they can keep going. The second one I want to talk about is t-shirts that they're introducing now that have sensors embedded in them. Now that's not a new technology, but the sensors are actually there for NFL players to see the load that's been placed on them so they can help prevent injuries to the rest of the body. Now, do you think this is a new piece of technology, but whether or not the NFL is going to choose to use it is still a question mark? Well, the sensors were invented by Catapult Sport, and they're very tiny, so they can be embedded without being noticeable to the players, which is cool. They also, as another source of data, so as you mentioned, data is a huge thing in sports right now. Big data is first kind of put into place in sports as portrayed in the film Moneyball.
Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Hard data is more involved in sports now than I think it's ever been.
Yeah. Well, speaking of actually analyzing a player's movements, there's the third piece of technology I want to talk about is a motion capture camera that players that they're putting on the fields so they can film in slow motion and actually track a player's movements and then feed that into an analysis so they can see if the players, how they're moving, and also detect if they're moving incorrectly. So if they're like running slightly wrong, and that means that are more at risk of injury over the long term, even if it's like something that's really, really tiny about their gait or the way they move, then, and particularly for sports like weightlifting, where your posture is going to be absolutely essential.
Crucial.
Yeah. They can now actually analyze and say, look, you're like, you're half an inch off when you do this motion.
Yeah. I'm glad this was all introduced when I stopped playing sports rather than my running technique where my arms are everywhere and they'll probably be like, wait, you're doing this wrong. Watch the clip, because I know people are going to be like, oh, well, you run that by in that Pussy Sports Soccer where they take little head kicks. No, I've watched players like John Terry wrap up their head from bloody gashes and go back on the field. So if this has to be included in football as well, then absolutely so be it. I'm open to science that helps people maybe live longer or maybe don't get certain injuries, the CTE and other things that are very severe. So I think you should take a look at this. This actually provides some interesting mechanisms that they're looking to apply, along with rule adjustments like you were mentioning with the kick return. So thanks for that video. Take a look. Back to TYT Sport.